All right, it is time to look at game number 7 in my 60 Memorable Games by Bobby Fischer. Fischer is quite the jet setter. We started in New Jersey, and then he went to Portorož, Slovenia, then to Mar del Plata, Argentina, and now he is in Zurich, Switzerland. Ah, the life of an international grandmaster. Well, the game is Olafsson versus Fischer, and it's a very interesting game. And while the primary objective of this video is to test whether or not I can recall the moves of this game, I wanted to come to ChessBase first and check the opening and see if there was additional insight. And so as a part of my research, I asked ChessBase to classify the game for me. And this it did. I can pull that screen up. This it did by telling me that this game falls under the classification E93. E93 is an ECO code, that's Encyclopedia of Chess Openings, which I believe was created by Chess Informant back either in the late 60s or sometime in the 70s. The name of this is King's Indian Classical, and it's the Petrosian system. Now, the Petrosian system happens when White plays d5. And you can see here that there are 52 games that have followed this line. And these 52 games are those games that are not followed by 11 castles. So let's look at this game a little bit now. Here it is. And you can see here, White plays bishop e2. Then there's e5. White has to make a decision, and d5. That puts the game in the Petrosian system. And then with the following, knight bd7, bishop g5, h6, bishop h4, a6, knight d2, queen e8. This puts us in the classification we were just looking at here, right here. And you see they have it listed, 10, knight d2, queen e8. All of the games that are here listed in the middle pane have this position. All right, let's go back to the game because I want to look at something that follows, and it's 11 g4. One of my questions was, how many of the games that are in this classification actually have g4 as the 11th move? In order to find out, I created an opening book. I've got it right here. And you can see that 11 g4 occurs only in 12 of the games. Now, castling occurs 100 times. And it looks like castling has a much higher win percentage as well, 61% versus 50% for g4. We can back up, and it is of some interest to look at this. If we go all the way back to White playing d5, well, of course, by definition, d5 is going to be played in these games. And then there's knight bd7. Bishop g5, which is what Olafsson played, of course, is the move. h6 is the top move, bishop h4. And then we come to a6. Now, what's interesting about a6 is it's not anywhere near the preferred move. There are 764, as you can see, games that have the move g5. a6 is only played 202 times, but they seem to be about the same in terms of winning percentage. Well, let's follow a6, and then comes knight d2, and this is, we would think, in preparation for g4. Queen to e8 is played primarily, but then we come to this matter of g4. It is not a very popular move at all. In fact, the preferred move is castles. Now, what got me thinking about this is something that Fischer said in his notes. He said that in the candidates tournament previous to this game, Tall had played the quieter move 11 kingside castle. Well, that is the preferred move here. 108 games follow that line. And then Fischer adds this comment. The move g4 is too committal and forces white to queenside castle. And I thought about that was very interesting. This whole idea of commitment and committal when it comes to the moves on the chessboard. What exactly is a move that is too committal? After all, couldn't we say that when white castles kingside, that he's committed his king to the king side? Well, that's an interesting question. Now, one of the reasons that I'm studying Bobby Fischer's games and his book is because I want to understand how he thinks. And how Fischer thinks will be reflective of how all strong players think. And so there is this issue of committal. And the only thing that I could come up with is that it doesn't have anything to do with, at least in this case, it doesn't have anything to do with, say, a bad variation or hanging a piece or anything like that. What it has to do with really is the fact that it's a pawn move. And pawns can't go backwards, right? When you make a pawn move, you're committed to the pawn move. So I think that's the issue, and it's something that I'm going to be thinking about in my own gameplay as well. Is my move committal? Am I pushing my pawn when I shouldn't be pushing my pawn? How is my pawn move going to influence the rest of the game? So I think these are great questions. One other thing that I wanted to do was with this move or this position is I wanted to say, well, what does the computer think? What does the chess engine tell me is the best move? And I was surprised. I hope you can see that very well. And of course, it's only at a depth of 22. But the best move seems to be g4, at least from a chess engine's perspective. And over here on the right, we see a depth of 44. g4 was still the preferred move, at least for that version of Stockfish. Up here at depth 51, a3. So we don't get castles, kingside castling, in any of the recommendations from Stockfish, at least not in this list over here on the right, although it does occur on my version of Stockfish at a depth of 28. Well, I thought that was very interesting. g4 might be committal, but it's also a very good move. Well, the primary purpose of this video is to see if I can recall this game from memory. And I'll be doing that next. It's time for Game 7. Olafsson versus Fischer, 1959, Zurich, Switzerland. Now, remember, I'm trying to recall the moves. I'm not using any notes. I have been practicing the game, and I have been studying it and doing research. But the goal here is to recall the moves. I hope I don't forget. Fischer's playing the black side. We'll go ahead and accept that. And Olafsson opens with an English. Bobby's going to play the King's Indian. Now, these moves, when I first played this game from white, very much impressed me as they just moved across the board. I thought it was very interesting. And there now is e4, prompting black to play d6. Now the knight comes to f3 and kingside castle and bishop e2. You know, I think it was at this point, I mean, it's a different position, no doubt, but against Petrosian, you know, Bobby would have played knight to h5. Of course, it was a totally different position, but that's not what happens here. Bobby plays e5. And now here we enter the Petrosian system with this move d5. And we get knight b d7. Now comes bishop g5. Bobby plays h7, h6, h7 to h6. The bishop goes back. The preferred move, as we saw earlier, is g5 here, but Fischer plays a6. Now comes the move knight d2, which I think of as in preparation for g4. Bobby wants to break the pin. I think he knows what's coming. Queen e8. Breaks this pin right here. Now comes the too committal g4. And the knight is going to leave. Now, certainly, white does want to get queenside castle. There's no doubt about that. What's going to happen here is this knight is going to come back to g5, and this move h3 is going to happen, and then we are going to get some movement over here on the queen side. Black's knight is going to go to c5. The bishop is going to come to d7, and in fact, the knight is going to make a little sortie out here to a4. All that is to come. I just have to get it in the right order. Yeah, it's knight g5. Up comes the pawn here, giving support. Now Fischer is going to play his knight to c5. We're going to get castles. Then it's going to be bishop to d7, and the pawn is going to come up here to the third rank on f3. And then we're going to get that little sortie over here. So it's going to all begin with knight to c5. Yes, knight to c5, castle, queenside castle, that committal move there. Bishop to d7, pawn comes up here. The pawn move also gives room to the bishop. So it does provide necessary support, obviously, to this e4 pawn because these knights are, looking at it. But it also makes room for this bishop. White has castled queenside. Bobby is going to launch an attack over there. Now, I think it's interesting that Olafsson does play knight takes knight. I'm not really certain about that move, really, and I haven't checked it with an engine. But knight takes knight allows bishop takes knight, and notice the bishop is supported by the queen. Could be another reason that Bobby wanted to put his queen on e8. But what I don't like about this sequence of moves is that white is forced to play b3. Wouldn't it be better if he'd left his pawn on b2? Well, I don't know. Bishop comes back to d7. Now what? Well, this pawn coming to c3 does allow this bishop access. And what Olafsson wants to do is he wants to generate an attack, this way, something like, these pieces pointing over here. So he is going to put his bishop back here on f2, I think. But then what is Bobby going to play? Oh, that's right. Yeah. He's going to block this diagonal. Yeah. Yeah. So the bishop comes back, c5. And now we're going to get a push here on h4. The attack on the king side is coming. The knight has no choice but to come back. The bishop continues the relocation so that it can attack down this diagonal. And at this point, things are really now going to heat up. Bobby is going to launch an attack on the B file. Olafsson plays the knight back here. The primary purpose of that move is to make room for the queen and this attack here. Well, we already talked about g4 being a committal move. Bobby's getting ready to launch a very committal move. And it is very much in the spirit of the King's Indian defense. So now we are going to open up the king side, and Bobby wants to do this, and his opponent, Olafsson, wants to do this. And you just don't know. I mean, certainly this bishop coming up here to f5, just firing down that diagonal, driving that queen away, it looks ominous, absolutely ominous. Queen comes over, gets out of the way. But now what does Bobby do? One of the first things that I noticed about Bobby Fischer's play was that he was not hesitant to push his pawns. And that's certainly true in the Sherwin game. That's certainly true in the Larson game. And it's certainly true here. E4. Fischer puts a lot of emphasis on this move, E4. He thinks it is, I think I've got this right, that it is really the central idea of the position. Now, for his part, Olafsson wants to attack down the G file, and he is ready to do it. So Olafsson has this coming in, and he has this coming down. It looks ominous. Fischer surely will have to make defensive moves here. Nope. Nope. Attack, attack, attack. Well, here comes the bishop. The chess engines will tell us that rook takes on g7 is actually a better move. But now this bishop has to be defended. And so Bobby does that by playing rook a7. Bishop takes, rook takes rook, king takes rook. If Olafsson wanted to remove many of the defenders in front of the king, I think we can say mission accomplished. Now what? I know Olafsson wants to attack down these diagonals here. And I think he does it right now. I think he moves his bishop right now. The chess engine will tell you, and well, in fact, Fischer says in his notes, this pawn cannot be captured. The chess engines, however, will tell you that it can be captured as long as white first plays rook to g1. You'll have to work out those variations. But if the rook comes to g1 and then we do all of the captures, the king is relegated over here to the h file, and white, although down a piece, is able to push his pawns and win back the piece, and we go into a drawn endgame. But Fischer says that his whole position here hinges on this. So the bishop does move away, and Bobby says it cannot be captured. Now Bobby, ever using his pawns, plays pawn takes pawn. Olafsson ignores the threat because he has a check to give, and the king steps away. We're getting very close to the end here. Olafsson still wants to press his attack. He plays the queen on this diagonal. Very little choice as to any other move there. Queen to e5. And now we are going to have queen takes queen. Pawn takes. Bishop takes bishop. Rook takes bishop. And now Olafsson plays pawn takes pawn. This position is, to me at least, very curious. There's no denying the power of these passed pawns. And this passed pawn just simply doesn't seem to be of enough significance. Well, Bobby wants to push his passed pawn, but he also cannot simply use a rook. He has to have the knight as well. He's going to put his knight onto f6. This knight is going to move to d2. Pawn is going to be pushed. The rook is going to be driven away. This pawn is going to be pushed. The king is going to come over, etc. So we'll start with this move here, knight f6. Now the pawn comes over. And Bobby pushes. No reason not to, right? Rook comes over to h1. And the wonderful thing about the position for Fischer is that he can also push this pawn immediately because his knight is on f6. The king comes over to lend support. Pawn gets pushed to e3. The knight has to depart, moves to f1. The rook comes over now, supporting the e3 pawn. This looks very ominous. The king comes up to block. And now the knight comes over onto h5. Clearly looking for mischief on one of these two squares. Certainly there would be forking, and it would certainly be bringing the knight out. So we're attacking all of these pieces here, for example. But Olafsson plays f3, king f3, which ends all discussion of the matter with e2. All right, well, that was not entirely easy, but I did manage to recall all the moves, and I think that was beneficial. All right, well, that is Olafsson-Fischer in the books. I hope you enjoyed that and maybe got something out of it. If you liked it, give it a thumbs up. And if you'd like to follow and see more of this content, go ahead and subscribe. Thanks very much, and we'll see you later.